in here in the studio, but we want to welcome him to the studio. Good morning, Adam Johnson from Safe Harbor Credit Union. How you doing this morning?
Good. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. Good to have you back here in the studio. What's new since the last time that we talked with you in your life or the team's life at Safe Harbor Credit Union? What's been happening here in your world?
Boy, I don't know. Not a whole lot exciting, but first I should say hi to everybody at Safe Harbor. I think last time I was here, a few of them were watching on their computers. So,
Yeah.
Team, if you're watching from behind your desk, good morning.
Yeah, and get back to work. No, I'm just kidding. Don't. No. But I think that's cool. Give them a shout out, and they used to have a great team there at Safe Harbor Credit Union. So we appreciate all that they do.
Sometimes it's hard to get some work done because it's we have too much fun sometimes walking down the hall or go downstairs and chat with some people, and you kind of, before you know it, it's already noon and you haven't got anything done all day.
Yeah, but that camaraderie is crucially important.
Hey, you got to love your job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you Janelle? Do you love your job?
Depends on the day.
Oh my gosh.
I said depends on the day.
Why? You
It's okay.
Love your job.
It's sometimes stressful, but I love the schedule.
Yeah, that's all right. Maybe you can. Adam can give you some tips to have it non-stressful, because you do have a good environment there at Safe Harbor Credit Union. And speaking of the team at Safe Harbor Credit Union, if you have questions about checking, savings accounts, all of that, they're going to know the answers. But the thing is that checking accounts and savings accounts are not like what we had when we were kids or growing up, teenagers and into young adults. Things are different these days, right?
Correct. I very rarely write a check throughout the month. Maybe I might write a check every quarter to the city of Ludington for my water. So I pretty much everything is just done electronically, whether it's a debit card. So I think less people write checks. There's definitely, you still get those people in there that come in and say, hey, I don't like to use a debit card. I'm afraid that my information might get stolen. There is a lot of fraud out there, so that is definitely a concern out there. But if you do have fraud in your account, the money is on us essentially, not the member. So if you do use a credit card and there is some type of fraud, we're the ones that are the ones paying for it, not the member, fortunately. A lot of people use the debit card transactions instead of writing a check. So banks and credit unions do make money every time you swipe your debit card. Interchange income is big. So I think that's why more and more institutions are rewarding members for trying to use a checking account there, whether it's an interest-bearing checking account, which ours is 5% right now, or sometimes it might not make quite as much sense to have it in the 5% interest-bearing account, and you might prefer a cashback because maybe you don't have a huge balance in your checking account like me, where it makes more sense for me to do the cashback. So I swipe my card, I don't know how many times a month, and I end up getting $10 back at the end of the month. So the $10 back every month turns out to be a little bit more than what the 5% checking would get me at the end of the month.
So are you able to, say you get that $10 back, are you able to pay like a bounce on that, like a credit card, stuff like that?
Yeah, it just goes right into we usually put it right into your savings account.
Oh, okay.
So we have a 2% savings account attached to those. So anytime you get that interest or the cash back at the end of the month, it goes right into your savings account, and it can accumulate or you can spend it on whatever you want.
So technically you can use what you made off your checking, put it into your savings, and then still get interest on that.
Correct.
Wow.
Okay. Correct. All right. Well, that's great.
That saver, we kind of designed that just to help people with that interest that goes in there, or that cash back goes right into your savings account. Just trying to help people. Not everybody's great at savings, so if that money just automatically goes into the savings, maybe they kind of forget about it and accumulates over time. So just trying to help people save a little bit more.
Well, we're talking with Adam Johnson, president of Safe Harbor Credit Union, this morning. Okay, so the flip side of that, two questions that come up: is there a point where you write too many checks or not enough? Is there penalties for not writing? Because sometimes you have penalties for not using your card or your account sometimes. Is there penalties? Is there a bad is there a flip side there?
There's no penalties, there's no fees, there's no minimum balance. If we ask you to get swipe your card at least 12 times, go into your online banking once a month, and that could be mobile banking or sit down on a desktop and log into your account, and then get electronic statements. If you do that, then that's when you will give you the interest or the cash back. If you don't swipe your card 12 times and you maybe only did 11, we don't penalize you. You just don't, unfortunately, get that cash back or that interest that you get. But some people say, "Oh, I don't use a debit card that much." Like my mom, she always would go to Meijer and pull out her checkbook and write a check and hold up the line for 15 minutes. But they find out when they do get a debit card and it is safe, they ended up swiping it a lot more than they anticipated. So I didn't think I would swipe much more than 12, but I think we also notify you how many times you swipe it. You're saying you got your rewards this month. You swiped your card 70 times. It's very easy. You could go to Wesco, get a cup of coffee for $1.98. That counts. Or you can set up utility payments like Consumers Energy, DT. That counts as well. So it's very easy to get to that 12. And you don't have to have direct deposit. Yeah, we like that. But if maybe you have an employer that doesn't do direct deposit, they still maybe old school cut you a check every week, every 2 weeks. So some other institutions might require you to do direct deposit, but we don't require that just because there are some places that don't do direct deposit. They just do paper checks. So.
Right. And I like how you talk about the online banking because I always use my online banking. Like, and another thing too is with my bank, I know every time that I get a weird charge, I've even had it with my Apple Music. I'll get like a phone call and it'll be like, hey, this is fraud prevention. Like, did you make this purchase? Press 1. If you didn't, press 2, or like anything like that. So yeah, it's nice to be notified even if you don't log into your bank account or say, somebody did hack your card, because it's so possible these days. I know somebody that had it 3 times in the last 3 years. So yeah.
And that is on the rise as well, right?
Definitely, unfortunately. But it's not the consumer that's on the hook for that. It's the financial institution. So that's why we try to do a better job of educating our members as well, to making sure they don't fall into those traps. They don't give their information over the phone, or if they are shopping online, that they're very careful on which sites they might go to, because there can be some bad sites out there that you put your information out there and then they could it might not be very well protected, or they could sell it and before you know it, everybody's got your bank account information and can very well take money from your account.
Do you see people when it comes to fraud? And I know we're jumping around from different things, but I'm curious about a couple of these questions. First of all, let's go back just a moment ago. Is it still 250,000 that were protected for if somebody uses our cards or that fraud comes along? Do you know that amount is it still that?
That's really for the FDIC or NCUA insurance, in terms of like it is insured at the financial institution if the institution were to, let's say, have to close for one reason or another, like the banks of California and stuff.
Okay. Yep.
That maybe if they had to close, that insurance covers stuff like that.
Okay.
In terms of fraud, we never see large amounts like that.
No, okay.
If they're gonna defraud somebody, it's gonna be relatively smaller amounts than that. And a lot of people make assumptions that if there is fraud, it has something to do with the institution, like it's someone hacked into our system, or which is not the case. It's usually someone uses their debit card online. And it's that, like you remember years ago, Target had a breach. So Target was the one that got hacked into. And if you shop there with your debit card, credit card, all that information was in Target's database, essentially. And then that was hacked. So a lot of people assume when there's been some type of fraud, it's the financial institution's fault because it was their card. So it must have been us that gave their information to somebody else, which is not the case. It's usually they're using their debit card and it's going into some other retailer or something like that, and then that's the one that gets hacked. And but unfortunately, it's the financial institution that have to make good of that and pay on those fraudulent activity.
Do you mind exploring that? Just one more question on that, and I want to get back to checkings and savings. How do you, as a financial institution, be able to protect those customers like that? Because sometimes it can be a large amount. Does that hurt the financial institution a lot?
Yeah, we have to kind of plan on some losses there, which is why we try to educate the members as much as possible to make sure they don't put themselves in those situations, which and then could eventually negatively affect us. So it really comes down to education, whether it's them sitting across the desk when they're opening up those accounts, or maybe it happened once and just trying to teach them or educate them so they don't do it again, whatever they did. So it really comes down to education. Hopefully that no one ever gets put in that situation, but if they do, we try to sometimes they just, whatever they're doing, it's happening many times, and then we might have to close out cancel their debit card and say, I'm sorry, you're going to have to use checks now, just because maybe they go to a lot of websites that might just be bad websites that just take your information. So it really comes down to education.
And it's very rare that happens. It has to be, because it's, I would assume that your team is having that conversation with them. They're saying, hey, you're in jeopardy of potentially losing that card. But I think it is the education, right? I think not all of us, but I've certainly had a reminder, as Janelle had mentioned a few moments ago. Woke up one morning, there was a charge on my account, and it's like, okay, I didn't make that charge. But the financial institutions are stepping up, the banks and the credit unions, to say, hey, we can get this resolved pretty quickly. Because back in the day, you had to cancel your card. You had to
get a new number for it, all that,
Nowadays, you feel a little bit more safer on the protection, even if you do get a fraud alert, right?
Correct. Sometimes we can maybe stop it before it actually goes through. And sometimes, like my mom a couple weeks ago got a phone call. Someone said they were from Spectrum. Said, hey, Susan Johnson, we just want to verify some things, and try to go. They pretend they know a lot of your information. Can you just verify what your Social Security number is? Can you verify this? Can you verify that? And then then before you know it, they're like, oh, I don't know if that was Spectrum.
Yeah, exactly.
So you really have to be careful, because generally, whether it's us or Spectrum or other utility companies, they're gonna not ask you those personal questions,
right? Because they're calling you,
right.
So basically, they tell you certain information for you to know that it's really them.
And in most cases, these places, they should know that information. Just just make it as a practice not to give that. One more question. I know we're getting closer to wrapping up this morning, but as you were mentioning checks, so I probably write a couple hundred checks a month. I know that sounds insane, but I put into our bill pay online the address, the what it's being paid for, so on and so forth. And I'm pretty much a person that sets all of my checks up, all of my payments up for my vendors, and so on and so forth. And so they just go out automatically. Is that a bad thing? Is that acceptable? Is there, again, an over usage at all, or not?
No, I think that's definitely acceptable. I've been somebody that's never really got into bill pay. I think just because I haven't had quite as many bills to pay like you do, maybe just some utility bills, and I might set that up electronically where it debits my checking account that way. But I think bill pay is a great way, especially when you've got a business and a lot of bills to pay that way. And it's still essentially electronic, where you're not sitting down and writing those checks by hand. So it's printing those off electronically and then sending them out in the mail. Sometimes there can be maybe a little bit more of a delay in your situation than if you were to go in to a utility company's website and click pay and have it come out of your check account that way. But the bill pay, I think, is still a safe, and it's a very popular way for a lot of people to pay some of their bills.
All right. And with both savings and checking accounts with Safe Harbor, there is a financial benefit from opening both types of accounts, because it's what's the percentages right now again?
5% on the checking for the interest-bearing one, and then the 2% savings account. And you get 2% up to $100,000 on that savings account. On the checking, $15,000 for the 5%. If you can definitely keep more than $15,000 in your checking account, it's just that average interest rate does drop a little bit once you get over that $15,000 mark.
That makes sense. Adam Johnson from Safe Harbor Credit Union joining us today. A couple things that I've learned from you in the past, and maybe this is still the truth, is if I want to go in and open up an account at Safe Harbor, become a member there, it costs $5. Is that right?
Correct. And that's kind of your membership.
Okay.
Goes into your savings account, but there's no minimum balances on accounts like that.
All right, and you can open up your account as early as today. Make sure you check them out.
And I want to say,
yeah,
another thing too is I've learned this in the last couple of years. If you have like a checking account, savings account there, I've noticed that you get better rates on car loans. Because they always ask me like, do you have a credit union? And I always thought that was weird because I've never like had a credit union. So I always thought that was really weird. And then I think that was the
institutions do like it if you have that payment set up automatically, their loan payment, your car payment coming out automatically from that account from that institution. Then you generally knock off 0.25%, which in this day and age can add up, especially if you're stretching your loan out to maybe 6, 7, 8 years. Maybe you got a big boat and it's a 10-year. That 0.25% does add up over time.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And Janelle brings up a good point is that just like when we're talking about shopping at local grocery stores and retailers and such, we should talk about banking with local institutions because it tends to be just better customer service in the sense. It tends to be that you're just treated better from a benefit standpoint and as well from just a customer service standpoint.
And I think when things are going really well for you, where there's no fraud, you don't have to maybe apply for a loan or anything like that. Things are going just well where your payments are coming out automatically. It's very easy to deal with somebody from out of town because you just don't need to talk to somebody. But when you are in a situation where there is fraud, a lot of times it's so much easier to come into an institution and just sit down across the desk from somebody, fill out the paperwork, than to have to call some 800 number and try to be on hold for a while. Sometimes it can just be a little bit cumbersome, take longer for things to get figured out. So I think when things might go south for one reason or another, it's always good to have a local institution that you can go in their door and sit down and talk to somebody.
Good point there.
I know like my mom banks with Safe Harbor, so it's nice. Like she can't do like anything on a computer, so she has like the online banking and stuff, and she's always forgetting her password. And it's like I can hit like one button and they're like resetting the password if I verify some information. And so I know like because I've been thinking about getting a credit union, but it's like mine's a big bank, so it's going from one person to the next person, and then you're verifying your identity that many more times. And another thing too that I like about like Safe Harbor is you guys are so involved with the community. Like you've done planting the petunias, you've did blessing of the boats, the food pantry, the trash pickup. Like you're so involved with the community versus like other big institutions.
We definitely have some people that have a passion. I'd say pretty much our entire staff has a passion to do some positive things in our community. So that's another reason why it's so enjoyable to go to work every day is just the people are so looking forward to whether it's pick up trash that day, plant petunias, or just try to serve the members and help them with their financial needs.
Good things there. All right, we're just after 9 o'clock. We've got to wrap up for news, weather coming your way in just a matter of seconds. Make sure you check out the team at Safe Harbor Credit Union, not only online, but also in person. Give them a call there. It is just 9:04 here on 102.7 Mom FM.